The Witcher 3 is as close to perfection as any RPG to date has managed. Thanks to its dark, brooding environments inspired by lesser-known myths from European folklore, there is a whole frickin' world of characters and quests that suck you right into its ridiculously intricate story. And with the series' position as one of the greatest video game franchises out there, it is reasonable to expect that our next trip to the continent not only irons out the few flaws of the previous games, but breaks some new ground for the RPG genre as well. Alas, with developer CD Projekt Red currently focusing on Cyberpunk 2077, it could be a few years before Geralt busts out his swords once again. But in the meantime, we will patiently hammer out our wish list, since it is inevitable that another go-around is on the Gwent cards, really. So let's take a look at what we want to see in the future if number 4 is set to stick to The Witcher's good name and become one of the greatest games of the generation. I am the newest recruit to the Lodge of Sorceresses, Ash from WhatCulture Gaming, and these are 8 things The Witcher 4 needs to do to surpass The Witcher 3. 8. Do horse riding and mounted combat properly. The Witcher 3 is no exception to the rule of fantasy game horse travel being a roller coaster of emotions, swooping between unadulterated ecstasy and raw gamepad-breaking frustration. There are points in the game where you come close to attaining a kind of video game nirvana, galloping across stunning war-torn countryside against the backdrop of a setting sun. However, these sublime moments are abruptly halted by rocks, fences, trees, which usually cause Geralt's horse Roach to neigh and stand on his hind legs as if it were posing for the DVD case of Black Beauty. Aside from Roach's inability to maneuver around or over any obstacle more rigid than a blade of grass, combat while riding the hapless beast is also frustrating. Whilst the slow motion moves go some way to stylising the action, providing you know how to do it, the tank controls make up-close combat a nightmare. The Witcher 4 needs to make riding Roach through a forest just as appealing and dramatic as riding through a field. Twigs should break off and scratch at Geralt's face. Thin branches should bend as the horse gallops among them, while thicker branches could be avoided by well-timed button presses. If you're being chased by a horse rider, you should be able to battle them with a similar moveset to the ground combat, as well as run them into obstacles and low-hanging branches. Remember that horse chase sequence through the forest in the Fellowship of the Ring? There is no reason why video games can't offer equally captivating horse-mounted drama. And yes, that's a thing. 7. Improve the combat. It took a while for the Witcher series to settle on combat mechanics that were deep, challenging, and rewarding, but it ended up in a pretty good place with Wild Hunt. Dodging is responsive in Witcher 3, adrenaline points can make you a momentary killing machine, and for newcomers there's a welcome description for each of Geralt's magical abilities to make them easier to use in combat. But fighting in the game rests in something of a nether region. It shares some similarities with the sublime stamina and timing-based fighting of Dark Souls, but ultimately feels less precise and skillful. Conversely, it is not nearly as spectacular as the more cinematic fighting in something like Shadow of Mordor. In The Witcher 3, you're often pitted against several enemies at once, but the targeting system isn't well equipped to deal with them, often leaving you confused and taking cheap shots from enemies that you know you should be avoiding. The Witcher 4 needs a larger arsenal of combat moves. A wider repertoire of combos based on speed, power, defensiveness, and so on would allow players to better hone Geralt towards a fighting style that suits them. 6. Make side quests affect the game world. The Witcher 3 does a great job of giving its side quests an air of importance and credibility. There were no basements to be cleared of rats or tacked-on missions where you had to fetch bread for the village spinster before the bakery closed. Thanks to the brilliant writing, you are given a strong sense that the odd jobs Geralt carries out for the people of the continent have a huge impact on their lives. Whether you're helping a person reclaim their family home from wraiths or sacrificing someone's life to lift a curse, you become emotionally invested in every one of their lives. But this sense of importance is much more a result of great storytelling than it is an effect on your gameplay. Whilst you get a sense of genuine satisfaction for completing side quests, they have little effect on Geralt once you've completed them, apart from endowing him with a heavier coin purse. The Witcher 4 could have side quests branch out into becoming more than just convenient ways to earn an extra buck. Depending on the outcomes, you could get shunned or revered in certain villages, and your standing with the local folk could change depending on your subsequent actions. What better way to get back into the good books of the man whose brother died by your side than by clearing a local monster nest threatening his family? The Witcher 3 did some great things with side quests, and The Witcher 4 can build on them further by making them a dynamic, shifting entity in the world. At least, more than it already is. Your actions impacting people in ways that come back to affect your gameplay experience long after the quest itself ends. 5. Let the player own a home. Right, now I know that Geralt of Rivia is not a man who easily settles down to the domestic life, but it would be great to see some kind of property ownership system implemented on The Witcher 4. Or just even a room, somewhere to lay your head. It'd be nice. Owning a home in an open-world RPG feels like a more significant feature than the option to sleep with half the game's cast of main characters, but that is not to say they're not mutually exclusive. Owning a home would definitely help with the whole banging thing, really. Most interestingly, it could be a place to keep various trophies that you pick up as you play the game. Bloodied swords from duels, monsters' heads mounted on the walls, the first outfit that you wore in the game, and all that kind of jazz. With the countless number of memorable experiences that the Witcher series offers, it would be fitting to have your own in-game shrine dedicated to them. 4. Fix the UI. The least idealistic and glamorous demand to make of The Witcher 4 is for it to include an interface that doesn't look like it just scrambled all the items, quests, and other information you gather throughout the game into an unintelligible mess. The Witcher 3 UI wouldn't look amiss in a complex 90s RPG, and does little to help you keep tabs on the substantial hoard of items that Geralt accrues. It is a nightmare of tiny text, indistinguishable inventory items, and scenarios where you accidentally sell valuable items to merchants for paltry coin, with the option to buy them back for 10 times the price. There are few quick select options too, so there are scenarios in combat where you have to pause the game to access a particular item or chow on a piece of bread. It's difficult to navigate, convoluted, and the player's immersion suffers as a result. Adding a modification option as standard would allow players to create their own UIs, and potentially improve on the meagre offering in the vanilla version of the game. 3. Make gathering ingredients more involving. Geralt is traditionally a master alchemist / potion junkie who relies heavily on dosing himself up with various concoctions and decoctions to psych himself up for battle. In light of this, it is perplexing that The Witcher 3 leaves you pretty much clueless about where to find potion ingredients. Alchemy in The Witcher 3 essentially involves gathering every single herb, vial, and dismembered monster piece you can find, then checking the inventory now and then to see whether by chance anything you've collected can be combined into potions. It feels frustratingly detached, as if you're playing the role of Geralt's clueless gardener scavenger who delivers the ingredients for the great man to concoct. If The Witcher 4 arrives, it needs to make the process of gathering ingredients less random and more engaging. Perhaps Geralt could buy or find books on flowers, herbs, and monsters which tell him where in the world those things are likely to be found. You could then select a potion in much the same way you'd select a quest, and have areas highlighted on your map within which you can search for the right ingredients. 2. Revisit an earlier period in Geralt's life. Whilst most of the ideas on this list are ways in which The Witcher 4 can build on the success of its predecessor, this is the only one that quite pretty much needs to happen if there is another Witcher game charting Geralt's adventures. That's because CD Projekt Red has already confirmed with The Witcher 3 that Geralt has reached the end of his story. Presumably, this means that he goes into retirement, retreating to a cabin in the woods where he sees out his remaining couple of hundred years by hunting deer, gathering herbs, and experimenting with hallucinogenic potions. As we all do. But the end of Geralt's story doesn't mean there is no story left to tell. It just means that The Witcher 4 would have to go back in time rather than forwards, exploring an earlier period in Geralt's life. The older Geralt we see in The Witcher 3 is one of the most notorious Casanovas in video games. So just imagine the smutty things he got up to in his 20s. More importantly, it would be a chance for us to see a more foolish, more reckless side to Geralt, and give us more insight into how he ended up becoming such a dour, gravel-faced miser in later life. 1. or get rid of Geralt altogether. It's always a risk creating a sequel that takes place earlier in the world's chronology than previous games. Sure, the Metal Gear Solid series pulled it off in style, or at least most of the time it did, but let's not forget the trauma caused by the Star Wars prequels. Prequels are a dangerous business, and automatically suspected by fans of being cunning ways to milk a franchise instead of giving it a dignified ending. The Witcher 3 ending was very much conclusive, and the developers have said as much. But the rich world it has presented to gamers has left them clamouring for more. Maybe then, in The Witcher 4, we could follow the story of a Witcher existing long before Geralt's time. Alternatively, how about a storyline set in a time before humans even arrived on the continent and it was populated by gnomes? Yep, the dark world of The Witcher was once filled with the little dudes who fish in your garden pond, and focusing on them could be the perfect way to return to the continent whilst distancing the game sufficiently from Geralt's much-loved storyline. Either that or something vaguely similar and much cooler. I don't know, I'm drawing ideas here. And that's our list. What do you want to see in a new Witcher game? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. I've been Ash and this has been WhatCulture Gaming. As always, don't forget to like, share, subscribe and bring a raven's feather, a black wild horse and a woman's remains to my cave. Thanks for watching.